Hello?
Felicia?
Yep, this is me.
So this is Roy. Why don't you give me a little bit about your background as far as your
hmm
involvement with the World Mission Society Church of God?
Well, just my background. My sister, she was, and I don't know exactly, but here at the Omaha, Nebraska location, there's a church, and my sister, she's involved in that particular church, in which I was asked to come to do a Bible study. She was trying to get me to do a Bible study with her, and so that's how I got involved. And when I saw what my sister was doing and the time that she spent away, and just some of the things that she was telling us about the church and how we were reading the Bible incorrectly, gave me pause. And I've been on the case since 2014, trying to find ways of getting her out of there.
How did she get involved in it?
She told me she was shopping at Victoria's Secret in the mall one day, and a woman had came up to her. I don't know if it was at the time we had like a New York City or New York and Company. I can't remember exactly, or Victoria's Secret. She said that she was approached by one of the sisters of the church, and they asked her, "Have you, read the Bible, heard of God the Mother, and all this other stuff?" And then they told her to come to a Bible study, and then it took off from there.
Did she go right and get baptized?
I don't know how long it took her to get baptized. I don't know if it was that day she went to that church or it took her a couple of times. She was actually involved in the church before she told me about the church. Because the way that I found out is like as soon as I heard about it, like I'm going like in on the research. And so I looked and I saw like Colorado had some type of thing they had going on, and I saw where I think my sister had made a comment, like a post or something like that, and it was prior to the time that she had suggested that she's been involved in this church. So I'm like, she's been involved with this church for a minute. She just kept it away from my family. But at the time, she would still do her normal activities and things with the kids. We didn't know. We just knew she was at some type of church, but we didn't know that's what she was doing.
Then how did you get involved?
Not so much as I'm actually in that church. It's my experience dealing with my sister being part of that church. And so I would be more so explaining the things like what I'm dealing with as a family member and the teachings and the things that they have told her that she's related back to us, and the things that came from her being involved in this church.
So you yourself were never a part of it?
Yeah, I never was part of this church, but just with the research that I've been doing, going back and forth with my sister and experiencing firsthand how my sister was treating her kids, her family members, her job, her car, all this stuff, I'm dealing with it firsthand. So when people are saying, no, that doesn't happen, the members don't act that way, I'm letting them know it may not be happening to them because it's not, you're probably not heavily involved in that church like that. But my sister, who, she loves the Lord and everything else, but she's so sucked in, she's becoming one of the stereotypes of the people that are at this church who are really heavily involved in the church, with losing contact with their family members, kids situation, not tending to her children, just a whole lot of other things. So I want people to know that when we say these things, it's actually the truth. It's not false, because we have no reason to lie. We want to take our time out to criticize the church or any of that.
What have you found out in these 4 years about the church?
From my experience, I can tell you about like my first Bible study when I did go to the church. I went one day, it was on the Sabbath, and I never returned back, which gave me red flags when I got there. When I first got there, I had my sister was telling me that there's a mother God and all this other stuff, and I'm telling her, I said, you're not giving me, like, this isn't the real true church. That's nowhere in the Bible. Do you hear about that? She tried to break it down. And my nephew at the time, who was like 5 or 6 years old, he was, he talks sometimes or whatever, but he came on the phone and he asked me, and he was like, Felicia, can you please come to church? And I, because you went ahead and asked me about coming to the church, I'll go ahead and go to the church. And when I went there, they put me aside. I got there a little bit late. I want to say maybe about 9:30. They put me aside in a room after they had like their little morning prayer or worship. And it was me, my sister, another sister, and another teacher, a male teacher. So he goes in about what we believe in the Bible and what we thought to be true and everything. So they start getting in talking about the old age, the new age, and all this other crazy stuff. And then they were talking about how Christ sahng-hong was the one who was talked about in the New Testament of the second coming. Then they go to, of course, everybody know that verse that they have in Genesis when they're talking about who is us, when they said create man in our image, or and I wanted to tell them, I said, that couldn't the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because he created a male figure. He didn't create a female until later on, and he saw that Adam was lonely and providing him with a wife. But I started getting into the part about sahng-hong, because that's what really stuck me. They didn't do so much on the mother. They said they would save that until next time. And she said, and next time you'll find out that there's God the Mother. So this first study was all about sahng-hong. They didn't get into God the Mother or anything. They just mentioned it, but their study was to talk about this new person claiming to be Jesus Christ. And so I kept asking them questions, and I kept asking them, I was telling them parts in the Bible, and I was relating to them like, that can't be true. I said, they never give that name. They said, you won't find it in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. And I said, go back and forth in the Bible. I said, but according to what's supposed to happen, none of those things have came to pass. Yes, it might be a far land and from East Patmos, but I would say Japan. They were like, no, it's the land that's the biggest land that's connected, not going across seas. So that's what they told me. And then I said, okay, you say in South Korea, but all these other things that I'm mentioning to you in the Bible, it still doesn't say that it will be that man that you're telling me right now. So I started hitting them with Bible verses, everything else. They would stumble. They were getting frustrated. And the one sister, she said, I've been here for 2 years, so I'm going to go ahead and get somebody that's been here a little bit longer. And the male teacher, I think that's what happened. I think that's how the male teacher got in, or they were trying to ask other members that were there longer to answer my question. But I was trying to make them understand what in the Bible, or how do y'all know that that was Jesus Christ in the flesh? And here's a story that he told me. And in the beginning, I started kind of believing what they were talking about, and I got excited, but then I was kind of concerned, and it gave me pause. I said, I want to know, and I was asking them just the simplest question, and I was like concerned, like, how come you can't answer this? Like, I want to know how you know it's sahng-hong. They said, one day on Christ sahng-hong, he was preaching to a group of people. He was having a Bible study, and what he was saying was so much of Jesus Christ that one of the members had said to Christ sahng-hong, then you must be the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He said, sahng-hong smiled at the man and walked out, and that's how they knew he was Christ. That's how they knew he was the second coming of Jesus. And I said, oh my gosh, to myself, and I got up, and we had ended our Bible study, and he told me he came and died, in 1985, and I said, I was born in 85 and all this other stuff, and I said, he was really here. Then I meet another member. He has his whole Bible just lit up, highlighted. And he's trying to prove to me, like, how we know that he's the second coming of Jesus. He talked a little bit about Mother God, but he don't get too much into it. And he said, if I were you, Felicia, I would get baptized right now. Like, we're going to have another service, but I would recommend that you get baptized right now. Like, there could be a motorcycle accident. You can have anything happen to you, but I'd rather your soul be saved and get baptized right now. I said, I'll think about it. And he said, okay, well, we have another service that'll be at 6 o'clock, and some of the members go home and get something to eat. They did have, like a brunch there. We sat and ate, and then, they went back doing their own little thing. But they had later on left, and everybody was, like, taking a break. And so I was with my sister, and I'm just, like, outside the church. I'm looking around. I'm looking at the people, and I'm just, like, dumbfounded, like, what just happened? And my sister was asking me, was I going to come back? And some of the other members were asking me if I was going to come back for a later service. And I was like, well, I got things to do. I don't know. I don't think I'll probably be back. I'll talk to you later, and just left. And I never went back to that church again until it was to get my sister or get my niece and nephew because of the things that were going on there.
Tell me about your sister's reaction, how this church has changed her. Are you concerned about her?
Only to the utmost power. Very, very concerned. Let me tell you the situation with my sister and just the things that happened to her being in that church. She would go and preach the word with other sisters. She'll go and do all this stuff. My sister would be there from morning until the time she had to go to work, and when she left work, she went right back to the church. And of course, she had my niece and my nephew, so it would be times where they would either be at my mom's house, my mom would be watching them, or she'll take them with her, not to leave them where it's like my mom was watching them constantly, but she would take them with her. And one time she was just going so hard at it, she ended up in the hospital. And they wanted her to stay long. I think she might have been in the hospital for maybe about 2 or 3 days. I believe it was like 2 days at the max because she just wanted to leave and go preach. I believe there was only 1 or 2 members that came to visit her out of like 30 or 25 members. Like, nobody came to really check on her, see how she was doing, because they were saying like she was just basically overworked and malnutrition and everything else, and she's doing so much for the church. So we were thinking that if she spends some time away from the church, she could kind of get her strength back and see that she's doing too much and kind of back up. Well, that didn't happen. She just continued to go to church for hours and hours and hours, sometimes 3 times a day. And so when she was there, she had my niece and nephew. They would be at that church. I have a lot of video recordings of the times that they came in, how my sister acted when I tried to tell her parts of the Bible. I told her about the Examining the World Mission Society Church of God, on the internet, court cases, things like that. She didn't want to hear it. She would tell me when Mother God died, she's not really going to die. She's going to ascend up in heaven, and we're going to go with her because we don't believe in her. We're basically going to hell. She would have my niece and my nephew out till like 11, many times between the hours of 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And my nephew, he would be tired. He'll have to go to school in the morning time. He'll wet himself in the bed. She would rush. She'll get upset with him for not getting up on time. Now, mind you, this is a 6-year-old. You need to take him a bath. You need to make sure that he's going to bed on time. You need to make sure as a mother to make sure that you're getting your kids up. That's not his responsibility, being 6 years old. They would stay gone all day, all night. He's tired. My niece at the time, which was she was around the age of like 1.5, all the way up until the age of 4, going to that church. And she's tired. She's rushing him. He was everything. And my sister, she is divorced. So certain days the dad would have them, and mostly throughout the week. I want to say about 4 days out of the week, my sister had them. So she wouldn't give him baths regularly. She's rushing him out the door. He's wearing the same clothes. Sometimes he, urinate on himself, and she's rushing. And if my mom is sleeping, and don't happen to catch her or say anything, he's going to school with those pants, or he'll sleep in his clothes that he urinates on. To my nephew will go downstairs, and he'll go to my mom, and he'll be like, I wetted my bed, I wetted my clothes, and he'll come to my mom. Then my mom is fussing at my sister, about taking care of him and giving him his baths. And the only times that he would have baths, he would say, well, I took a bath at my dad's house. So she started neglecting her kids at that point. One day we were, starting a school. You buy your kids backpacks, new clothes, shoes, and things like that. And she didn't buy any of those things. So myself, my brother, and my mom, we were trying to get money together to go buy them a new backpack. She made up a lie talking about somebody stole his backpack and all this other stuff. None of that was true. I go upstairs, I see the backpack and things we purchased, and everything was upstairs. Here's something that's weird. I don't know if this is taught or not. When it became picture day at school, she always would tell the school it's for religious purposes. He never took a picture in elementary school. Like, he's going to the 4th grade now. Never took a class picture, nothing. I don't know what's up with that, but, he would go to school or not go to school. He can't participate in anything fun there. She just wouldn't have him do it. There's other things that happen. I'm not going to get into full detail. I kind of talked to you about it. But for anybody that's at that church and the adults are having Bible study, to watch your kids, because you don't know what's going on if you're constantly hours in having Bible study. And I have had it where I went down to grab my niece and nephew out of the children's room, which is held downstairs, and the kitchen is downstairs, where the kids would just be sleeping. They wouldn't be watching like any church movies or anything about Mother God and things. It'll just be random DVDs, children's DVDs that you would have kids watch if they were at a daycare. Kids will be playing or whatever, and they'll have like a teen watching them, and mostly it'll be like a teen, or sometimes it'll be like adults. They'll go in there and they'll watch the kids. But an incident happened at church, and my sister, I went up to the church, my sister went there, cops there, and it's always a problem with my sister because we're always bringing something to the church because of what my sister's doing and with us having concerns. And so my sister had a court case for the incident that happened at the church. She failed to go to the church. She said she wasn't going to testify because she wasn't there. She didn't see it. We got evidence and things like that in firsthand because we're dealing with it. So their father ended up taking them. And then my sister, she had it where she was supposed to be having visitations, to gain custody. They wouldn't allow the kids to be back at that church. And anytime they were with my sister, they had to be supervised. So it came to the point where she would even cancel the visitation. She would be like, well, I have to do this for the church, and she would cancel it. And my niece and nephew, they'll get ready. We're looking to meet them at the visitation site, and we can't even visit them because the dad will call the dad, and he's like, well, your sister went ahead and canceled the visitation, so the kids aren't going. And it became so persistent that, they just canceled it altogether. And the last time that my sister saw the kids were last year in June. They just stopped all seeing them and everything else. So what came across was that because they weren't having visitation right, she wasn't going to where she was supposed to because she put it off for the church. She had a court date. Now, this is the part I'm getting into her about being married to one of the members in the church. Come November, they had a court date. It was supposed to be where she can still have custody of her kids. And I go up there, and I'm telling her, and she's telling my family that she's getting married. And we're like, what? And in my head, I'm thinking about all the stories that I heard about previous members and how they get married to one another. So I go up there and I'm crying and I'm saying like, what's going on? How come you're not telling me? Because me and my sister are only a year apart and we're so close, like everything that we did. And I'm just, because I'm not with her with this church, it's like I'm an outsider. I don't want to have any dealings and all this other stuff. So I'm crying to her, telling her, I'm saying like, you bring me out here, because you don't want the people to hear how you're really acting when you're not here at this church. I said, I'm upset because I have to schedule a time to visit with my sister. I shouldn't have to do that. She was like, well, whenever you're busy, you're either at school or whatever the case might be. I said, I shouldn't have to schedule a time, but I said, since you're so busy, you can't make time to see, and this is me being mad and angry, so, I'm just almost hitting below the belt. You don't make time to see your kids, lost the kids, you're not trying to make time to visit the family. My mom's on dialysis. She has you do things. You don't want to go do laundry, anything like that for her. It's only when you can do it at your time because it's conflicting with you being at the church. And so she's looking at me like she in Twilight Zone, no emotions, no nothing. I'm like, I'm hurt because as close as we are, you don't even come see your sisters. I've known you my whole life. These people only known you for about 4 years, and you giving them everything, using your money. You gave your car away. You lost your job. Y'all living somewhere. She left living with my mom. They moved in. They got the members living in these homes or whatever, the ones that lost their house, lost their car, all this stuff, and then they go buy these cheap used cars that break down. And they do have tons of vans, so I want to put that out there. They do have tons of vans, and they all get in the van and go to church and all this other stuff, but she'll be there late at night. So I had told her, I know I'm kind of going back and forth and jumping around, but she had told me, she said, well, where would you like to meet? So I was like, I said, I'll be available at 5 o'clock. And I said, all right, can you make it? She said, well, can you make it? I said, I can make it. I'll make my time to where I can see you. So we go eat, and when we're eating, I'm meeting her husband. And so it's me, my other sister, and her. And so I'm talking to this guy, and he's a Kenyan man, and he went here. He came to Omaha, or I can say Bellevue, which is like maybe about close proximity to Omaha, like probably like a 15-minute drive or 10-minute drive away from Omaha. But he came here to go to school. Every foreign exchange student knows the rules about if you don't go to school, you get taken back home. You get deported. So he was secretive. I asked him for his last name. He wouldn't give me his last name. I asked him where he was staying. He wouldn't tell me where he was staying. And my sister said, well, I think I'm going to call the cops because I don't know anything about you. You could take my sister and leave. And they were like, well, we're leaving to Minnesota to start up a new church. And once we get the church started with members, then we're going to come down here. And I said, well, you have a court case in November. Are you going to make it? Are you going to be back? And then I asked him a question. Aren't you going to kind of help her to make sure that she also take care of the kids and make sure she make it there? Well, that's her business. I'm not really dealing with that. I said, but you're her husband. You should be encouraging her. He was like, yeah, well, and, he just seemed to like he's in the Twilight Zone. He's not saying much because we're, giving him the third degree and everything else and asking him all these questions and grilling him about that. And so at the time, they get married, they leave, never came back for the court case. She lost custody of the kids overall. And then when she left, this was as of last month, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, Homeland Security comes over to my mom's house. It's got like 2 guys and all these cars show up, and they're looking for her husband. And they're asking where his whereabouts are, if we've seen him and all this. And they said if he's not in school, he knows he's supposed to be in school. And if he's not in school, then he will either, he'll be in trouble. I don't know if they do jail time or whatever the case might be. But he would definitely leave and get deported out of the country because he's supposed to be here for school. So I'm wondering how come he's not telling us, you know, his last name and all this stuff. I had to go downtown to get, like, to see if they were married and get paperwork, you know, and I'm just looking at all this stuff. Now I know, like, if they get married, he gets a green card. And they talking about, well, they suggested, you know, mother God saying whatever, or they suggesting that him and her get married to start it up. So he's like, well, and my sister's telling me, well, you can actually preach the word by yourself, or you can do it as a couple. I said, well, the reason why they're probably wanting you to get married, because it wouldn't look right for both of y'all to go up there and be living in a church or a house or whatever. And they actually started a house church. So yeah, they'll have you get married and moved on. I said, you've been going around preaching. Why do you have to get married? You know, and all this stuff that comes along with it. But she didn't want to hear me and what I was talking about on that, so she ended up leaving. And then next thing I know, back with the Homeland Security, they ended up contacting me, and I'm telling them, you know, yeah, they are married. And I said, aren't they supposed to fill out paperwork because they are married? And he said, yes, that's exactly right. That's what he should be doing if he's not going to school. And then my brother called the other night telling my sister about it, and she's talking about, well, we're all going to go. She said, the world's going to end soon anyhow, and I'm going to be up in heaven with my kids. And my mom is trying to ask, like, what do you do if they deport, you know, your husband back to Kenya or wherever he's from? Well, I'll just, you know, we'll be okay. I'll make it to heaven and all this other stuff. Now, she told me so many ways on how the world was going to end. She said, Mother God's not going to die, but if she do die, she's going to leave us and go to heaven. Then she said the war with Kim Jong-un and all that other stuff was going to happen in World War III, and the world's going to end soon. And then now she's talking about, she's not saying how, but she's saying she'll be up in heaven and all this other crazy mess. But it's like, you got the Homeland Security coming over, looking for this guy. He knows he's supposed to be in school, and if he's not in school, then he'll be in trouble. But I think he kind of knows what's going on, because he didn't want to give me his last name to look up. He didn't want to give me his address. When we were saying Homeland Security is looking for him, when we're calling him up a couple of days ago, he's in the background talking about, did they give them the address of where we're staying? Like, he's really concerned. So either he's doing something shady on the side, this is a way for him to be a U.S. citizen, or he's that so brainwashed in the church that they didn't even take time to fill out the necessary paperwork so he can stay here and preach and do the right thing. He's born in Kenya, and he's been all over the place. His mom stays in Switzerland and all this other stuff, and he's been to different countries, and he came to Nebraska to go to school. He's Kenyan, but he ended up getting wrapped up in his church, and I believe they approached him at the college, which kind of led him to go in to this church. But I'm thinking, you know, you're here illegally, you're going to get deported back home. Why wouldn't you make sure that my sister fill out the paperwork so she'll be like a relative or whatever, having him come in here, all that legal stuff and paperwork about being married, because they have to interview him, and when they interview him by himself and realize the reason why he's here, they might say, okay, you know, whether you're staying or you're going, you know, whether we're going to prove you or deny you. And I later on, like, look up an article at Minnesota University of Moorhead, or whatever it's called. It's up in Moorhead, Minnesota. I found an article how he didn't want to, they interviewed him, her husband. However, they didn't want to disclose the church location. He didn't want to disclose the church location, his experiences being there, and he said, we can't do so without the permission of our pastor in Colorado. And I guess Colorado was like the regional area of the Midwest, like the head people in charge, but they came from Omaha and left Omaha to go up to Moorhead, Minnesota to help this church grow, which already had members, and their church is located right next to the university. And so they had an article because people were concerned. There was concern that they were out 12 to 2 o'clock at night recruiting members, and they're thinking that this could be possibly, linked with sex trafficking because they're coming out in the middle of the night. And who in their right mind will say, hey, let's do a Bible study and try to get you in the van to go to a church or get you to go any place? They can even be kidnapping you at that time, trying to have a Bible study when you can ask me in the broad daylight, and I believe that they spend all their time studying the Bible, and then they go out late at night, and they're so brainwashed and sleep deprived and everything else that they can't focus and see straight and realize what they're doing isn't the best, not only, just for other people and what they're thinking about you, and, and safety-wise, it's just like a real big mess.
It always helps to try to figure out, well, why does a group like the World Mission Society Church of God, why are they so active in recruiting other people into their group? Now, of course, what some people would say, well, they're concerned about your soul, but there's got to be a motive behind it. Of course, the research that I've done, and I've done quite a bit of research on it, so many other of these cults, when you get right down to what they're doing, what are they about? They're about money and control. This is like a pyramid type of situation, like a pyramid scheme. People at the top of the pyramid, Jill Jang, whatever her name is, and those guys in South Korea, they're at the top of the pyramid, and they're the ones that are getting the majority of the money that's coming in. Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a bunch of bull crap, and I heard, and it's not, I think people shouldn't just look like if they're trying to find out if there's false or not. South Korea itself, from what I've also researched and looked at videos online, and they're known to have a lot of cults. And to the naked eye, and to people that are not aware of their culture and how they do things, you can ask somebody in Korea and be like, okay, what do you think about? Oh, that's one of the biggest scams, one of the biggest cults that they have here. So they're known for having a lot of different cults. I believe that it is because of the money, and they're so heavily trying to get things started in the U.S. because, okay, the U.S., they're heavily involved. Our main source is the Holy Bible. We believe in the Son, Son, Father, Holy Spirit, all of that. So, and then I also think about kind of a cultural thing, because when I went there and what I've seen, I know, of course, there are white members, but where I'm at is predominantly Hispanics and blacks. And so I think, those that are so heavily within their religion, and how my sister was at the time, going through that divorce, and, things not going her way, and she's weak at the time. They prey on people that need some type of comforting. And they saw and I'm thinking, well, they saw my sister coming out of an expensive store or shopping, because before all of this, she would shop her behind off. She's name brands, all this other stuff, like, you couldn't tell her anything, like, my niece and nephew decked out. After that, stopped buying the clothes. She told me ain't no point in my nephew going to school, because why do you need school? You about to go to heaven, and your salvation is way more important than learning about what they need to know at school. And I'm like, she done really lost their mind. So I believe they're trying to recruit members. The mall, they're looking where people coming from. I don't see them recruiting at the mall anymore. I don't know if they've been kicked out of our mall or whatever the case might be, but me recently, because I go to the mall most of the time, but I haven't seen them there. But I do know they get the college kids, because it's like, hopefully they can become whoever it is they're trying to be, whether that's a doctor or lawyer. They're going to be making some type of money. So on their website, they're saying to preach to the college kids. We know it's hard times with finals, and you're trying to get things done and studying for tests, and sometimes you just need that relief, and you still need to keep your faith that things will go right and all this other stuff. Well, if you get these college kids who don't know much about the Bible, haven't went through life and have much experience, and you manipulating them. But hopefully you just they know they got to go to school and they have to graduate. And when they graduate, hopefully they're still a part of this church and they're making these big dollars, and they're going to be one of the heaviest people donating to the church. She's collecting all that money, and that head pastor in South Korea that preach the word, I forgot his name, they're collecting all of this money. So it's when they're throwing you out of certain stores and locations and not allowing you to be on campus sites and whatnot, you try to go to another alternative method. But right now what they're thinking is, if we get the college kids, when they graduate, hopefully they have a well-paying job, and they can deceive even the smartest people, even the elite. It's in the Bible written. Even they can be fooled. And they giving their money away. They're hardcore and dedicated. They're going to do just that. Like I said, my sister, she lost her job, lost her car, stopped buying clothes for the kids, everything. She even asked us, could we possibly donate to her church? We're like, ain't giving them nothing. And we said that too. And they have a little point system. For every time they preach the word to somebody, they get a certain amount of points, like a reward system, and it moves them up. I had one member, my sister, she's from here too, but she went to California to finish school, and she did finish school. And they had told her when she came in to visit, because now my youngest sister, she's involved in the church, but she's not near as involved as my oldest sister. So they told her, now mind you, my sister, she ended up getting into this church, and she had to go to the hospital because she was malnutrition, all this other stuff, and just everything with her body, she needed rest. So they're going to tell my sister, they're going to say, can you tell your they're going to say, tell your sister, I guess kind of like to back up so much from being within the church. They're going to tell her this, your sister will never be what she's trying to be within the church, because she devotes so much of her time that she don't know how to take time out for herself. She will never get to where she's trying to be. Now, for them to go, not to say that to my sister, they're all there. They're not telling my sister, hey, we're going to have to shut down the church. It's always something with you, like your family coming up here, they're raising all type of problems. We got the cops coming over there, concerned about the kids, all this stuff. So my thing was, you didn't have enough gall to go tell my sister that. You're going to tell somebody that haven't been here, that ain't going to be here long. But the fact, and we told our sister what the member said, but she just took it like water rolling off a duck's back and just was like, so I don't care, and continued doing what she was doing. But I'm like, that's how they really feel about you. And I think because there was so much bad publicity at that particular church, it ain't made it into the news, but it would eventually got out. I believe that they set it up she's causing too many problems here. She wants to do something, let's give her a job. Let's say these two are getting married, let's send them out of state, and that'll back up the things that we're trying to get done here. Because I guarantee you, when my sister go there, it's going to be more problems. People going to be looking, wondering what's going on. Because every time we go there, I never see anybody else, family. We would go there, a lot or ever so often every time my sister did something crazy, or out of the ordinary that shouldn't be done. And it's I don't see anybody else there. And they all seem like they're in a twilight zone. I don't want to, bring them down or anything like that, or tell them one thing or another, because right now, it is, their brain is hijacked. They're brainwashed. They don't know what's going on. So the things they're trying to tell us is a Bible verse and all this other stuff. And I could go into the studying on the Elohim and how they want to say that means more than one God, but they take everything out of context. And I teach, and I tell them, you don't have to be a teacher to know the difference between a common noun and a proper noun. My sister, she keeps talking about, do you remember any of the members or them talking about the bride say come, it's in Revelation, chapter 22, verse 17, and it says in the spirit and the bride say come. And what they do is, in every Bible that you read, even in the Hebrew Bible, bride is lowercase. And they're talking about a place. It's just, a simile, just talking about, referencing the glory. And they actually, on their website, they capitalize that B to make it into a proper noun to say it's referencing Mother God. And then I said, well, if she's a true God, if she is a woman God, I said, why is it in certain, video clips they have of her, she has that Caesar image of Jesus, of the Passover in the back? And I'm like, there shouldn't be a given image. Why is that image behind her? That's not a true image. And then I'll get into, the Hebrew Bible when they talk about how the Hebrews, they say the true worshipers, but they say they don't use God. That's a Greek, and they form it as an idol and worship and all this other stuff. And so they said they wouldn't say Yahweh because it's such a powerful name, that they would call him Elohim. And they said Elohim means more than one God. But in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, when he is capitalized, they're talking about the Almighty One. They're not talking about a bunch of different gods as they make the other people believe it to mean. And so they take a lot of things out. They point things in. My other sister that's trying to prove them wrong, she talks about what Jesus would look like, not an image, but hair white as wool, feet onto fine brass burn in a furnace and stuff like that. And they said, well, he's going to look the same way when he comes, and, as he left and when he comes back, and all these things have to pass. And then they start talking about, well, they're talking about the bride, and how you know they're talking about that? And yes, I do need to do study. And from one of the members from examining the World Mission Society Church of God, they had inboxed me, and I told them about one of the leaders that are there, and she told me the lady left from her town in Georgia to come up and help start up a church in Omaha to get more members. And she didn't really do any studying of the Bible or anything. She's kind of like an overseer. So, of course, my sisters had questions, and she couldn't ask. And when they started talking about explaining Mother God, I said, for one, they start talking about how it says, I'm going to go to 21, verse 2. It says, and John saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. They're using a simile. So they're not talking about it's an actual human being. And then later on in verse 9 through 12, they start really getting into it. And they start talking about what the New Jerusalem looked like. I said, how on earth is Mother God going to be that many buildings, that many cubic feet high and wide? That's a big woman. They're talking about an actual place. They're talking about, the gates, what the gates look like, with the, everything. And it's how are you not seeing this? And so I don't really try to get into a Bible battle with them, because if I say one thing, they say flip and go to this page. If I tell them this thing, flip and go to this page. Why is it that I'm always wrong and you guys are always right, and you don't just want to take for what the word actually says instead of taking it out of context? So I don't try to get into the Bible. For the most part, I try to tell people that, if she's Mother God, you shouldn't have to have an interpreter interpret your language. God knows all tongues. She's not going to say, I don't know what you're saying. She's not going to try to take a guess at what you're thinking or anything like that. She would know. And I'm like, my own personal opinion, I'm like, you got North Korea right above you. You got somebody with some weapons and mass destruction going on up there, and you telling me you can't try to persuade this guy to stop doing what he's doing? However, you're telling us that she knows all things and all this stuff, but woman can't speak English fluently, probably can't speak Spanish fluently. I saw a video that some Spanish country did, and she was kind of speaking it, but it's she don't know what you're saying. you shouldn't have to practice your whatever offering you want or whatever you want from her or whatever when you go visit her in Korean or any of that. So I'm just saying, like, she don't know you. I told my sister, I said, she don't know who you are. If you go up there and you ask her name and things about your life, she wouldn't be able to tell you. And so how heavily my sister is in that church, I would expect like they would have offered her a trip to go to South Korea to go visit her. But my sister, she have yet to do that. But I'm hoping that I can get her out, you know, and I pray about it all the time. And I just try to collect things, and I'm hoping that this will kind of open her eyes when she noticed, you know, the situation going on with her and her marrying that Kenyan guy. He's not going to be here pretty soon. I'm assuming. I don't want anything to happen to him, but it's like, you know what you need to do, and you're just not doing it.